Lesson 87, video part 1. So, we're going to do some fraction multiplication. So, let's start with this. 1/2 times 4/4 equals 4/8. Read the equation. Ready? Go. 1/2 times 4/4 equals 4/8. The problem multiplies 1/2 by a fraction that equals 1. What fraction? 4/4. You know that when you multiply a fraction that equals 1, the value you end with equals the value you start with. I'll repeat that. You know that when you multiply a fraction that equals 1, the value you end with equals the value you start with. So I multiplied it by 1. So it's going to equal the value you start with. This is 1/2. 4/8 is also 1/2. What fraction do you end with? 4/8. So 4/8 equals 1/2. Because 4/4 is basically 1. This is actually 1/2 times 1 equals 4/8. So what does that tell me? 1/2 equals 4/8. So here's some more. Here's another rule about multiplying. So I know 1/2 times 4/4 equals 4/8. Then I'm going to add some different ones. 1/2 times 5/4 and 1/2 times 3/4. Here's another rule about multiplying. If the fraction we multiply is more than 1, we'll end up with more than we start with. So, if this is a top-heavy fraction, that means we're going to end up with more than what we started with. If the fraction we multiply is less than 1, right, that's not 1 whole, it's 3/4 the way full, we're going to end up with less than what we start with, meaning this number is going to get smaller. This number is going to get bigger. This is going to stay the same. Same, bigger, smaller. So, read this problem. 1/2 times 5/4. What fraction do we multiply 1/2 by? 5/4. Is 5/4 more than 1 or less than 1? More than 1. So do we end up with more than half or less than half? More than half. So I'll write here, more than half. This one we're going to end up with less than half. So, let's look at some other problems. A, B, C, and D. Here we have 2/3 times 9/10. 2/3 times 10/9. 2/3 times 6. And 2/3 times 4/5. All right. Here are some problems that have 2/3 as the first fraction. Every one is 2/3 is the first fraction. Read the problem. Ready? Go. 2/3 times 9/10. What do you multiply 2/3 by? 9/10. Is 9/10 more than 1 or less than 1? Less than 1. So do you end up with more than 2/3 or less than 2/3? Pause the video. Less than 2/3. Problem B. Read the problem, pause the video. 2/3 times 10/9. What do you multiply 2/3 by? Pause the video. 10/9. Is 10/9 more than 1 or less than 1? Pause the video. More than 1. So, do you end up with more than 2/3 or less than 2/3? Pause the video. More than 2/3. Problem C. Read the problem, pause the video. 2/3 times 6. What do you multiply 2/3 by? Pause the video. 6. Is 6 more than 1 or less than 1? Pause the video. More than 1. So do you end up with more than 2/3 or less than 2/3? Pause the video. More than 2/3. Problem D. Read the problem, pause the video. 2/3 times 4/5. What do you multiply 2/3 by? Pause the video. 4/5. Is 4/5 more than 1 or less than 1? Pause the video. Less than 1. So do you end up with more than 2/3 or less than 2/3? Pause the video. Less than 2/3. Remember, if you multiply by more than 1, you end up with more than what you start with. If you multiply by less than 1, what do you end up with? Pause the video. Less than you start with. I'll repeat. Remember, if you multiply by more than 1, you end up with more than you start with. If you multiply by less than 1, you end up with less than you start with. All right. Let's switch gears into some sentence problems. We'll work with facts for different problems. We'll work with facts for different problems. Some facts tell about 2 names, some facts tell about 3 names. Just like we did in the lesson before, 2/7 of the workers were eating. 42 workers were not eating. Read the problem, pause the video. 2/3 of the workers were eating. 42 workers were not eating. So, how many names are in this story? 3. What are the 3 names? Workers, eating, and not eating. Next one. Two-thirds of the glasses were empty. There were 60 full glasses. So, how many names does this story tell us? 3. What 3 names? Glasses, empty, and full. One more. 1/3 of the books were open. 12 books were open. So, how many names does this story give us? 2. What 2 names? Books and open. All right, so please open your workbook to lesson 87 and 5 part 1. You're gonna see more of these in there. Here are the same facts we just worked with. You're going to underline the different names in each item. Then you'll write the number of names, 2 or 3. So open your workbook to lesson 87 and find part 1. Pause the video now to work on that. So let's review the answers. Problem A. 3 names. workers eating and not eating. Make sure you underline the names that you said, of the quantity that you said. So if you said there were 2, underline the 2 names. If there's 3, you underline the 3 names in the story. So, problem B, 3 names, glasses empty and full. Problem C, 2 names, books and open. Problem D, 2 names, girls and playing. Problem E, 3 names, pencils short and long. Problem F, 2 names, buildings and old. So, check your work. Now please pause the video and find part 2 in your workbook. You have 4 mixed numbers. You're going to rewrite each mixed number so the fraction is 1 more. So you have 8 and 2/4. I'm going to show you a quick way of doing this. So, what I'm going to have you do is you're going to take 1 away from here and add it to this fraction. So you know you're going to be adding 4/4 to this fraction. So this is going to become 1 less, 7, and this is going to be 4 more, 6. Problem B. You have 2 and 3/7. You're going to take 1 away from here, so now it's 1. You're adding 7/7 over here. 7 plus 3 is 10. Just like so. So, do the next 2 on your own. Pause the video. Let's check your work. So you have 6 and 1/8 and 4 and 5/9. So this is going to become 5. You're adding this. This is going to become 9. This is going to become 3. Adding 9. This is 14. All right. So I'm going to put something on the board real quick. Two, 3, 0, 6, 4. Here we have Jim, Fran, Alex, Liz, and Ann. Trips to a lake or ocean last year. So, Jim took 2 trips, Fran took 3, Alex took none, Liz took 6, and Ann took 4. So, how many people are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. So, what number will you divide by to find the average? 5. Yes, 5. It doesn't matter that one of the numbers is 0. Doesn't matter, it's still a number. So, raise your hand when you know the average for the group. Pause the video. Solve it. 3, 0, 6, and 4. Well, that's 5. That's 10. Altogether you have 15. I'm dividing it by 5. 3. What's my average? 3 average trips. So, there's your example. So, open your textbook to lesson 87 and find part 1. So, in part 1, the chart shows the number of chin-ups each person could do last month and this month. Read the numbers for last month. Pause the video. 4, 0, 0, 8, and 18. Figure out the average for last month. So you'll be adding those up and dividing it by what number? Pause the video. 5. So, figure out the average for last month. Now, check your work. What's the total for the group? 30. What number did you divide by? 5. So what's our average for last month? 6. Because you're doing 30 divided by 5 equals 6. Figure out the average number of chin-ups for this month. So add that up, divide it, find the average. Pause the video now. So what's the total for the group? Pause the video. 25. What number did you divide by? Pause the video. 5. What's the average number for this month? Pause the video. 5. So raise your hand when you know which person improved the most from last month. Pause the video. Fran, because Fran went from 0 to 1. Raise your hand when you know which person dropped the most from last month. Pause the video. Paul, he went from 18 down to 13. Great job. So this concludes the first video for lesson 87. Please go to video 2 to continue.